I thought time would erase her. I thought new lovers, new routines, new scars would bury the fire she lit in me. But when she walked back into my life, older, stronger, and more impossible than ever, every rule I followed shattered. She once trained my body. Now she haunts my dreams. And tonight, I'm done pretending I don't still want her. Would you dare face the one person who knew your body better than you ever did? I hadn't heard that whistle in years. It cut through the gym like a blade, sharp, familiar, and triggering something deep inside my chest I thought I'd buried a long time ago. I turned slowly, already knowing who I would see before I even laid eyes on her. Coach Renner. Or just Elena now, I guessed. I wasn't a student anymore. I wasn't her trainee. I wasn't the girl who used to steal glances at her legs during stretches and lose all sense of timing when she corrected my posture. But my body hadn't gotten the memo. There she was, same intense gaze, but the edges had softened. Her once jet black hair now had streaks of silver, tied back in a ponytail like always. And that stance, arms crossed, hip slightly out, lips pursed, as she scanned the room, it was as if time had folded in on itself. She spotted me in the corner and raised an eyebrow. Elena, I said stupidly, like I didn't just spend the past 7 years trying to forget how her voice made me feel. She smirked. I guess some things don't change. Still last to arrive, huh? God, that smirk. I could feel the heat rush to my neck, and I hated that I still responded like this, like a student about to get detention, but secretly craving the attention. I didn't know you'd be back, I said, adjusting my hoodie, trying to look casual while my heart pounded. No one did, she said, walking toward me. Her steps were calm, confident, just like always. The club offered me the head coach position for the summer intensive. I said yes. I needed a change. I thought, why not come back to where it all started? She stopped just short of my personal space. My breath caught, and then softly, you look good, Harper. Stronger. I blinked. You too. She chuckled. Liar. I've got more gray hair and 3 more injuries than when I left. We stood there in silence for a second, just looking. The sound of sneakers squeaking and weights dropping around us faded into a blur. I couldn't focus on anything but the way her eyes lingered on me, not in a professional way, not anymore. There was a tension, thin but electric. And it hit me then. She wasn't looking at me like a coach. She was looking at me like a woman who remembered. We were interrupted by someone calling her name. She glanced over, nodded, and looked back at me with that same unreadable smirk. "We'll catch up later," she said. But I knew with everything inside me that nothing about that reunion had been casual. Not her smirk, not my flushed cheeks, not the way we both hesitated just a moment too long before parting. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying it, her voice, her gaze, the way my name sounded on her lips. The years I had spent suppressing those memories, training sessions that became too intimate, compliments that went unspoken, feelings that hovered in the space between us, came rushing back like waves hitting a cliff. And the worst part, I didn't want them to stop. She had been my coach, my role model, my boundary. I swore I would never cross. But now she was just Elena, and I was no longer pretending. The next morning, I arrived early. Don't ask me why. Maybe I wanted to prove something to her, to myself, to the ache that had woken up in me the second she re-entered my life. Or maybe it was because part of me wanted her to see that I wasn't the same girl anymore. The gym was mostly empty, a few regulars, the same smell of sweat, rubber mats, and determination in the air. I moved through my warm-up routine like it was muscle memory, but my brain was elsewhere. I hadn't told anyone she was back. Not my best friend Kayla, not my sister, no one. I was afraid of what saying it out loud might do, how it might turn this strange electric feeling into something real again. And real was dangerous. I was mid-stretch, legs spread on the mat, back arched, when I heard her voice again. "Still rushing through your stretches, I see." I turned my head. Elena was standing behind me, arms folded, watching. That smirk. God, it had always been her armor, and somehow also her weapon. But this time, there was a softness in her tone, a memory. I sat up quickly, trying to hide the way my pulse spiked. "You always said I was too impatient." "You were," she said, stepping closer. "You still are." She crouched down in front of me, her knees cracking slightly as she did. She winced. "Okay, maybe I'm a little slower now." We both laughed. Then, silence. She reached out slowly, deliberately, and adjusted my foot with the back of her hand. "Your form's off. Let me help you." I should have stopped her. I didn't. Her fingers trailed up my calf, over my knee, pausing at my thigh. Not inappropriate, not quite, but enough to make my entire body hum. She adjusted my leg gently and pressed my shoulder down with the palm of her hand. You used to hate this stretch, she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. I still do, she smiled, but you're holding it now. I was. I was holding something else too. Breath, memory, desire. We stayed like that for a second too long, her hand still on me, our eyes locked. The world seemed to still. Then her voice dropped, lower, rougher. You've changed, Harper. So have you. She stood, brushing her palms on her sweatpants. Meet me tonight, after closing. I blinked. What? I want to talk, she said. And not here. The rooftop, 9 p.m. And just like that, she walked off, like she hadn't just pulled the floor out from under me with a simple request. I almost didn't go. I paced my apartment for an hour, tried on 3 outfits, then ended up in a hoodie and jeans. My heart beat like I was back in high school, prepping for a first date I'd sworn I'd never have. But when 9 p.m. came, I was there. She was already waiting. The city lights painted her face in gold and shadow. She turned when she heard me and smiled, small, knowing. I wasn't sure you'd come, she said. I wasn't sure either. I just, she began, biting her bottom lip. I've thought about this moment for years, about what I'd say, what I'd feel. I told myself I was being stupid, that it was a one-sided crush, a mistake. I inhaled sharply. She stepped closer. But now that I'm standing here and you're looking at me like that, I don't think it was ever just me. I swallowed hard. No, I said, it wasn't. The rooftop was quiet, except for the distant hum of the city below and the thunderous pounding of my heart. Elena stood so close now I could see the fine lines near her eyes, the softness at the edge of her smirk, and the storm she was hiding behind her cool exterior. I had spent years imagining what it would feel like to be this close again, but I never thought it would actually happen. I didn't plan this, she said, voice low. I didn't come back looking for you. I nodded. But now that I'm here, I can't pretend I don't feel it. Silence stretched between us, warm and dangerous. A memory played in my head. The first time she helped me up after a fall, the warmth of her hand on my back, the praise she whispered when I broke my record, and the moment I almost kissed her after winning the regional tournament. I was 19. She was my coach. Nothing happened, but everything changed. I used to lie awake thinking about what I would have done if you had kissed me that night, she whispered. I froze. You knew? Of course I knew. She laughed gently. You looked at me like I was oxygen and you were drowning. I was, I said without thinking. The words hung in the air like something sacred. Elena's eyes flicked to my lips and then back to my eyes. She reached out and touched my wrist, slowly, carefully. It felt like fire and ice all at once. I kept my distance because I had to, she said. You were young. You looked at me like I was invincible, and I was terrified I'd prove you wrong. You didn't, I whispered. You proved something else, that wanting you wasn't a mistake. She closed her eyes for a second, as if bracing herself. We can't undo the past, but we don't have to run from it anymore. Then softly, unless you want to. I stepped closer, closing the final space between us. I don't. And in that suspended moment, before logic could step in and drag us back to safety, she kissed me. It wasn't rushed, it wasn't hungry. It was slow, intentional, like a confession and a promise wrapped into one. Her hand cradled my jaw, mine rested on her hip. When our lips parted, she didn't step back. She looked at me like I was the only thing that had ever made sense in a world full of chaos. Do you regret it? She asked. No, I said. Only the years I wasted pretending I didn't want it. She smiled, and it wasn't the smirk of a coach this time. It was a woman smiling at another woman, with history behind her and desire right in front of her. We stayed there for what felt like forever, sharing silence and warmth. There was no game to play anymore, no authority, no fear of rules, just two people who had waited too long. Eventually, she broke the silence. Come to my place tomorrow. We'll talk, cook, be normal. Is that what this is now? I asked. Normal? Elena laughed. No, but maybe it could be ours. And in that moment, I believed her. I hesitated outside her apartment door the next evening, holding a bottle of wine like it was armor. My hands were sweating, my heart beat a little too loud. This wasn't the gym. This wasn't a rooftop under stars and confessions. This was her space. When she opened the door, she was barefoot, hair loose. A soft black sweater clung to her shoulders and fell off slightly on one side, revealing a freckled collarbone I'd never seen before, and maybe shouldn't have noticed, but did. She smiled at me like we'd done this 100 times before. You made it, she said, stepping aside. You sound surprised, I replied, stepping in. I'm not, she said, just relieved. Her apartment was warm, cozy, Bookshelves, a dim yellow lamp, a huge fern in the corner that was clearly overwatered. It smelled like sandalwood and roasted garlic. She'd been cooking. "I hope you like pasta," she said over her shoulder. "I like you," I blurted, then froze. She turned around slowly. "I mean, you're cooking," I tried. Her eyebrow raised. "Sure." We both laughed, but it didn't feel nervous this time. It felt like teasing, familiar, intimate. We ate at her small round table, legs brushing occasionally. We talked about nothing and everything, training disasters, her failed attempt at teaching yoga to retirees, my current job at the nonprofit, her favorite wine, the song she couldn't stop playing in the car, and underneath it all, every look, every pause, every accidental touch hummed with unspoken tension. After dinner, we moved to the couch. She poured 2 more glasses of wine. I sat beside her, knees tucked under me. She pulled her legs up, too. And then, the question I knew was coming. "Did you ever hate me for leaving?" I looked down at the rim of my glass. "I didn't have the right to." "That's not what I asked." I exhaled. "Yeah, I did. For a long time. Not because you left, but because you left without saying why." She nodded slowly. "I thought staying would be worse. I was afraid of what I'd do if I stayed, of what I already wanted to do." My chest tightened. She reached for my hand. "Harper," she said, her voice low, "I've kissed people since you slept next to others, but I never felt anything again like what I felt with you. That need, that pull, that ache when you walked into the room." My hand trembled. She set her wine down. Her fingers touched my jaw. "Can I?" I didn't answer. I just leaned in. This kiss was different. Not slow and testing like the rooftop. Not unsure. It was hungry, raw, honest. A kiss that came with years of unsaid things. When we broke apart, she leaned her forehead against mine. "Still scared?" I asked her, whispering. "Only of losing this again," she murmured. I cupped her face. "Then don't let go." We didn't move for a long time. There was no more past in the room, just now, just lips and hands and quiet breaths between them. I wasn't her trainee. She wasn't my coach. We were 2 women who had waited long enough. Sunlight slipped through the blinds, striping her skin with gold. She was lying beside me, breathing softly, her hand draped over my waist like it had always belonged there. Her hair was messy, tangled against the pillow, And I was wide awake, staring at the ceiling, trying to make sense of what this meant now that the night was over. We hadn't spoken much after, just kisses, soft laughs, the kind of silence that wasn't awkward, it was full. But now, in the light of our day, I felt the questions creeping in. Was this a beginning or another beautiful mistake? She stirred and blinked her eyes open. "Hey," she whispered, brushing a strand of hair from my face. "Hi." There was something shy in the way we smiled at each other, like we were back at square one, only this time the line had been crossed, no turning back. "Regrets?" she asked, barely audible. I shook my head. None, just wondering what comes next. She sat up slowly, wrapping the sheet around her. Her back was to me now, and that silence between us shifted. It wasn't full anymore. It was cautious. "I want to be honest with you, Harper," she said, voice steady. "Coming back here, it wasn't just for the job. I told myself it was, but that wasn't the truth. I think I wanted to see you again, to know if what I felt all those years ago was real." I sat up too, pressing my palm to her back. "And?" I asked. She turned to me. Her eyes were soft but fierce. "And it's real, still, maybe even more." I nodded slowly. "So what are we?" Her lips curled into a wry smile. "We're two stubborn women with history, chemistry, and probably a few complications ahead." I laughed. "Sounds accurate." She leaned in. "But I want this. You. Not as something stolen in the dark, not as a secret in a locker room. I want real mornings, real choices. If you do too." My hand found hers. "I do." 3 weeks passed. The summer intensive brought us back into the same space every day. She was still strict during drills, still barked orders with the same edge that made me smirk. But now I saw the flicker in her eye when our fingers brushed, the way she lingered after hours, the way we unraveled together when the doors were locked. Some people whispered. One or two gave us side glances, but neither of us cared. Not anymore. One evening, after a late training session, we walked home in the rain. No umbrella, just soaked clothes, quick steps, and laughter. She pulled me into an alley to kiss me under a flickering street lamp. And it hit me. This wasn't unfinished business. This was finally finished business. Resolved. She wasn't my coach anymore. She was my beginning. Sometimes the person who once trained your body ends up holding your heart years later. If you've ever fallen for someone you thought was out of reach, what would you do if they came back? Tell me in the comments. And if this story pulled at your heart the way Elena pulled at Harper's, don't forget to like, share, and follow for more love stories that burn slowly but deeply.